Hello everyone, Dr. Suneel Dhand, internal medicine physician. Welcome to another video. Within the last few days, I read a rather disturbing story that I wanted to share with you here, disturbing being an understatement. And it relates to the possibility and what might happen in the future with a future pandemic and the preparations that are taking place. Let me share this with you here. So here we have a story reported on Sky News on the website, which is a UK publication. Disease X, UK scientists begin developing jabs against new pandemic. The work is being carried out at the government's high-security Porton Down laboratory complex in Wiltshire. Whenever you hear something about the government carrying out an operation at a high-security facility, preparing for the future, that is something that should always pique one's interest. Let's dive into the story now. So United Kingdom scientists have begun developing jabs as an insurance against a new pandemic caused by an unknown disease X. The work is being carried out at the government's high-security Porton Down complex in Wiltshire by a team of more than 200 scientists. So this is no small operation by any stretch of the imagination. More than 200 scientists working on it. Think about that. They have drawn up a threat list of animal viruses that are capable of infecting humans and could in future spread rapidly around the world. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? A virus or other infection spreading rapidly around the world. Which of them will break through and trigger the next pandemic is unknown, which is why it's referred to only as Disease X. And this news agency was escorted around the site to see the work being done in high containment labs. Well, that's interesting right there. A major news agency being escorted around a high security facility to see all the work being done in containment labs. Almost like they want people to have it in their minds that this is going on to prepare for the future. Professor Dame Jenny Harries, the head of the UK Health Security Agency, said what we're trying to do here is ensure that we prepare so that if we have a new disease X, a new pathogen, we have done as much of that work in advance as possible. Hopefully we can prevent it, but if we can't and we have to respond, then we have already started developing jabs and therapeutics to crack it. Think about that for a moment, the investment it takes to develop jabs and therapeutics for a complete unknown in the future, but they're willing to do this, to bank on there being a future pandemic that they need to respond to with jabs and therapeutics. The Jab Development and Evaluation Centre at Porton Down has been expanded to take on the work. Originally, it was focused on the pandemic virus, but scientists at the centre are now involved in monitoring several high-risk pathogens, including bird flu, monkeypox, and hantavirus, a disease spread by rodents. So clearly these are the pathogens that they tell us they are focusing on, but who knows, in a high security facility they may be focusing on other pathogens that they're not telling us about. One early success is the world's first jab against Crimean Congo hemorrhagic fever. I spoke about that in a video a few weeks back, a disease that spread by ticks and has a fatality rate of 30%. Early stage clinical trials have just started with 24 volunteers expected to test the jab. The disease is becoming more common in Europe. That was the focus of my last video. So why do they think we need to be on our guard against future pathogens? Well, here we go. The professor said climate change and population shifts are making another pandemic more likely. What we're seeing is a rising risk globally. Now, it's interesting that they mentioned climate change and population shifts, because did that really have anything to do with the origins of the last pandemic? Think about that. But now they're all on board with climate change and population shifts being the cause of a future pandemic. Some of that is because things like urbanization, where you may get virus jumping into humans living close by, as we've seen with bird flu. And some of it is because of climate change, where you get things like ticks and mosquitoes moving to where it was previously cold and is now becoming increasingly warm. So this is a growing risk agenda, but it's one we can use our science actively to prevent human impact. Remember, follow the science. That's what this is all about. Follow the science. Bird flu is currently thought to be the most likely pandemic threat for the future. The Royal Society for the Protection of Birds says at least 30,000 seabirds have died around the UK this summer as a more virulent strain of the H5N1 virus has swept around the world. So is this only in the UK, or is it a more global effort? The agency is part of a global effort to develop a jab within 100 days of a new pathogen being recognized as having pandemic potential. That's quite something to think about. Within 100 days, that would be unbelievably quick. And they want to act quickly to any new pathogen being recognized as having pandemic potential. Historically, that would be unheard of. It would normally take 5 or 10 years. That was the historical standard. But for the last pandemic, it was around 1 year, 360 days. So this is a really high ambition, but for some viruses, it is definitely possible. That is quite a story right there. And it was reported across the mainstream media. Take a look at all of these headlines here. And I have a few thoughts that I wanted to share with you. I'm sure you have your own thoughts as well. I'm sure you will comment down below. But think about this for a moment. Supposedly the last pandemic, when did it start? 3.5 years ago now, officially, that's when it started. That was supposedly a freak, once-in-a-lifetime event. Now all of the evidence and authorities across the world are admitting to this. It does not seem like it was a quote-unquote natural animal-to-human virus. It was not a natural virus. It was man-made, which is crazy when you think about it. I'm surprised more people are not diving into this and asking more questions every day. But it was man-made, supposedly a lab leak. So if it was such a freak accident, why would authorities across the world be investing this many resources into a future event in the near future? Think about that for a moment. It doesn't really make any sense at all, given how the last pandemic is likely to have started. After all this time of humans being on the earth, what is it, hundreds of thousands of years, humans have been on the planet. What are the chances of having two similar pandemics in a close amount of time? Think about that as well for a moment. And secondly, you can bet your bottom dollar on this, no pun intended. As it alluded to at the end of the article, if authorities in the United Kingdom are working on this at a high level, then authorities across the world, including the United States, are also working on this. And let's remember, whenever you have a topic like this and the potential for jabs and therapeutics to come out in a short amount of time, the big pharmaceutical companies are looking at this as a complete bonanza, as the last 2.5 years have been for them. They have made more money on these products. These products that have been released over the last 2 to 3 years are some of the most lucrative pharmaceutical products in history. They have been sold in mass amounts to governments across the world, millions and millions of products. It has made a lot of people very rich indeed. A lot of homes have been bought on exotic islands. It's important when you read the news, when you watch TV, that you realize many of the things that are going on in the background and the people who are benefiting financially from any situation. And I'm sure that the pharmaceutical companies are thinking strategically ahead. How are they going to make more money? What's going to happen in the future? And do you really think the big executives wouldn't welcome a pandemic in the future where they can make a lot of money, billions and billions of dollars? That's another point right there. And finally, I want to leave you with this, and this is perhaps the most scary thought of all. We have the blueprint in place. It is being adopted or has been adopted by governments across the world, and establishments have decided to sign up to this particular blueprint. Future pandemic, exactly the same as the last pandemic. People have learnt nothing at all. Lockdowns, jab programs, mandates, that is what the future potentially holds. And that is why we all have to be aware of what's been happening, what our governments are thinking, what they've signed up to, what the establishment wants. And this comes right down from the top, the World Health Organization. So it could be a very scary future indeed. I don't mean to sound too pessimistic, but remember, a lot of things are going on that we should always be aware of. We should have our eyes open. Thanks everyone for listening. Let me know your thoughts down below. Dr. Suneel Dhand. Check out my online academy and my Uncensored platform. Those links are down below. Hit the like button if you like this video and the bell button for more similar videos in the future. We will talk again very soon.